time for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning. Let's bring in Arise analyst Dr. Constance Ikwoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Hey, good morning, Yolanda.
How are you? Good to see you.
I am very well. Good to see you too. And good morning, Gwenga here.
It's always a lovely moment to have you here.
Oh,
good morning,
thank you. It's
Doctor.
good to see you too. Good to join you. And then in Lagos, we have Adesuwa and Vimbai. How are you guys doing? Happy Friday, or like they say, it's Friday.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
We're doing great, thank you. I definitely would have lost a bet today because I was so sure you were going to bring us the last color on the rainbow. I thought you were going to end the week, but it still looks stunning though.
Well, I'm not ending the week with the rainbows.
Bye.
All right. Okay, it's wonderful to see everyone. Hello there and welcome to the program. We begin with This Day newspaper. In This Day this morning, we have Natasha Akpoti still in the headlines. Here it says NLC Ozekhome, Natasha's lawyer, condemns Senate over Senator's prolonged suspension. This is a descent into dictatorship, according to Labour, and they have threatened to mobilize against Senate. Constitutional lawyer continued suspension is political victimization and unconstitutional. Natasha's lawyer threatens further legal actions. If you take a quick poll about this topic, you'll probably find that many people are weary of discussing the Natasha news item. The different angles to this story seem to have been exhausted in the last 1 week. However, this remains a top story, perhaps because of the larger implications, how badly this entire thing has been managed and what this means for the country. Wenga, what fresh angles are you looking at this morning, especially as we can see that her lawyer has threatened to initiate fresh legal action?
Well, very sensitive issue, I must say. Emotions are running high. At least you talk about the representation of a group of people that has been silenced at the highest lawmaking body, that's the Kogi Central. Now, Natasha has made this move, but I wonder, it brings me a stark reminder of my class in logic, and there's what we call argumentum ad misericundium, which is an appeal to wishful thinking. There is no way we can wish away the process of the law in this regard. And when you see that symbol of the court, that faceless individual, it does not have regard for emotions or sentiments. The law has to take its course, which shows that it is no respecter of anybody. Well, Yahya Danzaria, the clerk of the House, and that's another process that we could look into, has also replied Senator Natasha that that would amount to sub judice. But the lawyer is saying that no case on this related to this case could be counted on the grounds of sub judice. But the fact is that there is a case in the law that supersedes whatever. So admitting her back now would be a flagrant disrespect. And so the same allegation that they are accusing or giving ultimatum against the clerk for is the same contempt that also counts on their behalf. So when we look at all these things, I think the lawyers now should come up and start telling the truth about many of these
outside
cases.
of the
No, because I need to make this point, please. I need to make this point. Please, just allow me. The lawyers now, they admit all sort of briefs, all sort of frivolous briefs, even when they know that it's not really going to amount to anything. Look at the 2023 presidential petition. Even the jury, most of the jury admitted that it was just a flexation of the law. So when we look at many of these things, what I would suggest is a political solution to this, because if we go the long route of the legal process, it would deny the Kogi Central people representation at the highest lawmaking body in the land. And it will also come up with a lot of, because the government, the government procedure gives the leadership of the Senate to use subterfuge. Because now the Senate president is supposed to be responding directly to Natasha, but they are following red tapeism, where the clerk that does not even have any entanglement or any conflict with Senator Natasha is the one replying.
Okay, I mean, emotions ran high, as you said, Ella, but that's why you wanted to say something.
Yes, I think it's very important to stress what SAN Mike Ozekhome said, in that this is unconstitutional. He even cited the Bauchi House of Assembly case versus Rifkatu and Dana. And also the NLC has come to say this is an assault on democracy. Now, it's important to be clear that the clerk of the National Assembly has no authority over an elected senator of the Federation. Right? And I think this is very important to be clear on these issues. When we're talking about the law or what supersedes the law, a rule of the Senate cannot supersede the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The Constitution is the supreme body here. And so when we're talking about these legal issues, I think it's important for us to be clear, and it's to be clear about what is being said.
All right.
Right? This idea of sub judice, they're saying that they're using it as a weapon.
Absolutely, they are using it as a weapon, but can you disregard the process of the law?
Okay, guys, if
but
we have
the law
1 hour,
also says that, because if we're taking it, I'm just to, on this matter of sub judice, let me just round up here.
Yes.
When we're talking about sub judice, the Senate itself has said that in the same Natasha case, the March 4th judgment for Federal High Court saying that they should not sit on the matter, which made it sub judice, they put it aside and said that the court cannot tell them whether or not they can deliberate on a matter. So this idea of sub judice is not something in our law, and it's not something in our practice.
And this one, yesterday we had a good laugh around the fact that if you bring 100 lawyers around the table to discuss this issue, none of them will agree. There's so many interpretations. So I think another central part of this conversation is the judicialization of our politics. These issues should not be settled in the courtroom. However, the court does have to intervene when fundamental rights seem to have been violated. So let's continue to see how it plays out. I know you want to move on, but ultimately, fundamental rights have been violated, and Justice Nyako did acknowledge that in her CTC.
If we have 1 hour to discuss this particular topic, we will not exhaust it. That's
enough.
why I said in the last 1 week, we've exhausted all angles to it. Perhaps a political solution is necessary here. Let's move on to another story in this day. The window story, now to a running our news item. GHL First Bank wins battle but loses war to retain crude proceeds from FPSO Tokoni. Lots of legal fireworks in this case, in which First Bank from the beginning claimed that GHL owed it $225.8 million. But GHL countered that this is false on the basis that FBN breached a 2021 subrogation agreement, therefore no payment was due. Vimba, how are you reading this latest court judgment? Can you unpack this for us?
All right, well, this has been quite a long, drawn-out case so far, but I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that we seem to see development, we seem to see things moving in the right direction, which is that whatever dispute is going on, no entity has the right to hold, the crude oil of another entity at ransom, so to speak, while the court processes play out. And this is exactly what the court has ruled, which is that the main issue was to preserve the res. Being the crude oil in the FPSO Tamara Tokoni. So let that be released now, because if you remember, the allegations were that the crude oil was being held and it was being released selectively. And this crude oil, part of it belonging to GHL, Con Oil, and NNPC. So if this crude oil now can be released, the sale can be made, and the proceeds of that sale will now be held in escrow that will be overseen by the clerk of the court. And I think that's a chief registrar, of the court. And that is a step in the right direction. Like the headline says, it's a battle. There is still a longer war going on. But at least we know that given the importance, especially in this era, of crude oil to our economic sustainability, we know the contribution that it makes to our economy. I mean, 95% of our forex comes from crude oil. And then you look at the fact that our crude oil target price of $75 has not been met. We know that the global average has been just about $68. So any issue pertaining to crude oil, I think, is a sensitive economic issue. You know, at least if the sale can proceed, then we know that on the financial side of things, that will balance. Let the proceeds be held in escrow until this dispute is resolved. But good to see that, you know, things are moving forward, because it has been in a standstill for a long time. And also positive to see that the courts can move expeditiously at times.
Yeah, absolutely. We have not heard the last of that case. We'll bring in more to you as things unfold. Back to politics, still in this day. INEC 157 associations fail party registration. We also have that piece in New Telegraph, so let's pull that up. There it says party registration 157 fail as ADA, ANC, AAP, 11 others scale INEC's first hurdle. Here, only 14 out of 171 political associations that applied for registration met the pre-registration requirements. Those that scale through will now move to the next stage, which is physical verification. I mean, can we talk about why there are so many political associations or parties? You know, there's a lot of them. I mean, there is freedom of association, right? But why do we have so many? It looks like, you know, it's a path to influence, economic opportunity, and access to power. In a country where government plays a powerful role, you know, in distributing resources and all of that, Adesua, please come in here. What's your sense?
See, the issue, my sense is that the issue here is that we have commodification of political influence in Nigerian politics. That means people barter their influence, whether it's so they run in primaries or run in elections, and then they will now collapse their structure 5 days before the election and say, oh, I'm supporting the APC, or I'm supporting the PDP, or I'm supporting the ADC. It's commodification of the people's power, essentially, is that we have people who barter these things so that to make themselves more relevant or to make themselves look more important. But also beyond what the politicians may want out of this, I think we also need to think about the effect this has on our polity. Because on one end, we don't want a single party state, right? And that was the pushback very earlier on this year, is that we don't want a single party state. However, when you have too many political parties, what you do is that you actually weaken the system, because whoever wins an election would do so on a very small mandate, or maybe even a small margin. And so you now have essentially an ineffective way, or like a fragmented society. So I don't know how much we're going to see all these parties scale through. And a lot of these parties end up being regional power blocks, even if they do have the ability to scale through. I don't think they're going to affect the national conversation so much. But especially when we see, you know, the conversation about the ADA was that it was originally supposed to be a vehicle for the opposition party leaders who have now moved to the ADC, Atiku, Amechi, El Rufai, and Aregbesola. However, we still have the ADA coming through the system. We also have former President Goodluck Jonathan, you know, looking for a party to go to. So we'll see what happens.
If I may come in here, I think regardless of the political undertone that many of these parties have become so weaponized, I think the law is clear on the requirements to form a political party. Section 222 of the 1999 Constitution is clear that it has 6 clear conditions for the parties to meet for it to be registered as a political party. Otherwise, it will be seen as a political association. Right. And number 1 is that the name and address of these parties must be registered at the INEC headquarters. The membership must not show any sign of tribal or ethnic affiliation. The constitution has to be clear and must be registered at the INEC headquarters. And any alteration of this constitution must also be registered at the INEC headquarters. The party must have a clear constitution, and the address, they must have a clear location at the INEC headquarters. So these are the stipulations required to form it. And also Section 79 of the Electoral Act is also clear on the symbols. The symbols must not reflect any ethnic or religious affiliation. I think these are the conditions that some of the remaining numbers, apart from the 14 that made it through, could not fulfill. It is very clear.
All right. Yolanda,
I'd like to bring you into and want to have a political party.
All right. Yolanda, I'd like to bring you into the next story from The Guardian. I mean, it's not a very sexy, in quote, story, but it's also nevertheless important. So let's go to The Guardian, please. It's a constant feature with The Guardian. They always have special reports with all those wonderful illustrations. So today, open defecation, the worsening crisis, and how this threatens 2030 sanitation target. This piece is complete, with all those illustrations there, so you can see for yourself. Only 9% of households have access to basic sanitation services, 48 million without toilets, and this is a recipe for cholera and diarrhea, which kills over 100,000 children yearly. Finally, North Central leads in prevalence, followed by Southwest, as Lagos and Delta struggle with enforcement awareness. This is not, like I said earlier, a sexy story, but is an essential piece in that basic sanitation underpins development and helps to prevent the spread of waterborne diseases. It also underscores the urgency in the system to have a functional state that is able to solve this problem. Yolanda, 100,000 children dying yearly from these waterborne diseases.
This is so unfortunate. Dr. Constance, if you remember yesterday, we were speaking about the overall sanitation in Abuja and in other parts of the nation when we were talking about
cleanliness,
how the cities are just heavily polluted. And now to see these numbers is quite staggering. Kudos to The Guardian for always bringing in these graphics that are very educational and really eye-opening to show you how the situation is on ground. But one thing that I think needs to be focused in on is the fact that maybe people do not have enough information. It's not just, easing yourself. There are diseases that are related to this type of, lack of sanitation. There are implications to this. You just said about 100, is it 100,000? Kindly correct me.
Yes,
100,000. And yearly, that's a very staggering number. And it also just in a way shows the backwardness of how we are not being educated adequately.
But
on
Yolanda,
how to
is it only education though? Because one of instances where a lot of people are homeless, when you go to Lagos, for instance, you will see a lot of homeless people have nowhere they live under the bridges.
Absolutely. So when I say a lack of education, I mean in the area of sanitation. I just don't mean generally, because surely even if there are no homes, there are better ways to dispose of your fecal matter. You can dig a hole in the ground, cover it with soil, and and so on and so forth. It can decompose. But to do it openly and in places where it can be easily accessed by people, by water that people drink, it leaves a lot to be desired. So there's a goal, there's a practice for 2030, it says, to try and mitigate this. Hopefully this will come with active measures and not just something that is said and put out there.
All right, Vanguard newspaper for fans of football. We have the World Cup here. As Eagles demand NFF board quit if Nigeria fails to qualify. Olise blame Super Eagles, poor run on foreign coach, entire NFF board must go, says Mikel Obi. Benga, I know you're a football fan. Do you concur with Mikel Obi and Olise's verdict as it relates to the state of football today and particularly the World Cup qualifying match?
It's rather unfortunate. Like I said earlier, it's one of those moments when you could only make a wish, and that's if wishes were horses. Now, depending on order or your opponent to do the job for you, clearly does not make any sense for the football team. Now, we have a situation where South Africa is 6 points clear ahead of Nigeria. And now, with only just 2 matches where Nigeria could only achieve a maximum of 6 points. And we have a situation where South Africa is hosting at home and has 2 matches to play. So how do you expect, how much, I don't understand how the bargain will be, even if we bring in the worst politics of football. I don't. So for the sport administration to say there is still hope, that would only exist in the realm of wishful thinking. I think we should rather channel our energy, refocus our energy to the AFCON.
Right.
I saw A.B. Yomo's beautiful report, and she also advocated that Nigeria should not invest too much, because also the star of the team, Victor Ozekhome, who has been doing a wonderful work, has been injured. So we are short one in this mission, almost impossible. I have to be patriotic, but I also have to be truthful to Nigerians in this analysis. So
but
it's
there was also that report.
title.
Did you see the statements from Asamoah Gyan, the Ghanaian player, who was accusing Osimhen of faking his injury, saying that, oh, this is something he's also done in the past.
But sincerely, if that is true,
discouraging.
If that is true, we've had cases like that in the past.
I doubt it's
but
true.
If that is true, if that is true, for someone that has made a lot of sacrifice for Nigeria to get to this point, and also remember that during the time of Coach Finidi, who started this campaign, also had a personal, allowed his personal sentiments to override his decision making in bringing a crucial Osimhen that was clearly the star of the team, sacrificing him and allowing us to lose vital points. Even the former Super Eagles captain, Austin J.J. Okocha, also said it, that we should trace the Super Eagles disappointing exit.
Sorry.
Okay, so Benga, in contrast, the women are doing fantastic. The Super Falcons and the D Tigers, I have to rub that in. Okay, our time is fast spent. Let's quickly see Daily Independent. Vumbai, I'll have to bring you in here, but you have to be brave. Daily Independent, FCCPC secures 10 billion naira for customers over complaints against banks and others. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission says this covers cases lodged with the Commission between March and August 2025 following complaints against banks, fintechs, and others. The issues range from unfair charges, service failure, unauthorized deductions, deceptive marketing, poor disclosure of terms, and failure to provide redress within acceptable timelines. So, I mean, it's important to hold businesses to account, especially with deductions from people's accounts, which sometimes amounts to fraud. And so, Yolanda, not Yolanda, rather Vimbai. I was going to pair this with another story up there in the same paper. It says, Nupeng Dangote deal on unionization collapses. You know, that was pretty fast.
Yes.
So do you want to quickly take on this too? Yeah, that was quick.
All right, that was very quick. Let me begin with I mean, they are related because, of course, we know that the FCCPC ultimately is out there to ensure that monopolistic practices are averted, and this is the accusation that is being leveled against the Dangote refinery. But let's begin with this 10 billion that has been recouped on behalf of consumers, which is a massive number. You know, when we speak of the measure of consumer protection, we speak of the scale of harm. Now, if you're speaking of 10 billion naira, that's a substantial amount of harm, over 9,000 complaints, but predominantly coming from the banking sector. Now, this is the part that really concerns me, because we know that we are on a drive to become a $1 trillion economy, number one. Number two, we've reverted to orthodox economics, where the governor of the central bank is saying that he's playing with monetary policy tools to try and bring down inflation and to try and reduce the amount of cash in circulation. However, when you have people who don't trust the banking sector, when they feel that there are unfair deductions, when they feel that there are unfair charges, when they feel that their money is not refunded on time, when they are debited unfairly and so forth, then you lose trust in the banking sector. Currently, as it stands, the numbers from earlier this year, I believe March of 2025, say that 91% of Nigeria's currency that is in circulation, 91% is in cash. That means for every 10 naira, 9 naira is being held in somebody's hands as cash. So this is, very, very disturbing because of what it does. Again, we're trying to fight inflation with monetary policy tools. We know that inflation has started coming down, but of course that's largely due to how we've reconfigured our inflation basket and we've changed our base year. But practically speaking, and this is why when we commit to orthodox economics, there's so much criticism around it, because people are saying Nigeria is structured so deeply around the informal sector that there's only so much you can do at a monetary policy level that can, harness some of the extremities that we're seeing within the hands of individuals and small businesses and so forth. So a positive for CCPC, ensuring that consumers' rights are protected. However, it also highlights the vulnerabilities of this economy, especially with regards to our fight against issues such as inflation and so forth. Very quickly on Dangote and Nupeng, I believe that they've issued another threat to strike as well. The question is, so are we now going to have to call DSS yet again to settle this? We need sustainable solutions that can ensure that workers' rights are protected across the board. Those are the core issues at that dispute.
We'll go to the international headlines. We'll take all of them, and then Yolanda, you can comment. So let's start with Daily Graphic. President Mahama flags $42 billion import scam. We also know that Ghana received some West African deportees from the United States recently, as was it a couple of days ago. They have that deal with the US to take in deportees. Then moving on to Daily Express, UK Prime Minister being described as weak after he finally sacks the country's ambassador to Washington over his affiliation with Jeffrey Epstein. We're talking about Peter Mandelson. So the Labour Party is totally in disarray. The thing with Starmer is that he would initially say he backs his appointees, and then after a short while, he caves under pressure. And then to Daily Sun, where the U.S. is boiling, the caption says, "Face of evil," talking about a picture of the suspected killer of Charlie Kirk, President Trump's ally. This assassination has rocked America, with Trump blaming the radical left. And then finally to The Guardian, another crisis in the Americas, this time in Brazil. Bolsonaro convicted of plotting Brazil coup. Yolanda, please jump in.
So many top stories on the international scene today, and I'll try and touch on each of them very briefly. First of all, with Ghana, I would just like to say kudos for what they've been doing. You know, it's not easy to show such regional support when it comes to taking in deportees from other countries. So this is a very big win. Mahama has been, he's been around since January for this current administration. And so far we have been seeing a steady hand of him making some really good and brutal decisions that are, not just in support of Ghana, but in support of the region itself. So a very great kudos to that. When it comes to what's happening with Mandelson, it's not very much of a surprise. In the diplomatic community, it's not taken very lightly when such allegations are brought forward. And now it's no longer an allegation, because the government has confirmed that certain information has come out to be true of, the affiliations between Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, who is a, well-known sex offender before he took his life. So with that, it's unfortunate that Starmer is getting, kind of a kick in the back, because he did not act quick enough. Yes, he did not act quick enough on this. But, prevention is better than cure. But in this case, he has to face the repercussions of his actions. When it comes to the death of Charlie Kirk, it's quite sad, because there are a lot of mixed reactions. There are some people who were very much for what he stood for, and there were some that were quite against it. So to be, in the middle of this storm, it's a positive move and a fast move as well, to see the FBI releasing photos and saying, look, we have somebody who we are suspecting. They're saying that this guy seems to be around a college age, sort of, in terms of his age and the way he looks.
He's 31.
So
he's 31.
He's 31.
Yes.
Oh, great. I didn't get that information. So it's really good to see that, no matter what your views are on what somebody stands for or is against, death is something that shouldn't be, it's not a justification. And hopefully the law will take its course, and the young man we're seeing on the screen will be found and brought to book, God willing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yolanda, for those analyses. And, some people have said that even President Trump, his rhetoric doesn't help,
yes,
the culture and, the sentiments within the country. And that's why a lot of people have said that the Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party, but Trump Party.
Right.
Anyway, those were your headlines today, Friday. Thank you for watching.